Level 1, the trainee. You arrive at Eglin Air Force Base with a duffel bag, a security clearance still processing, and no real understanding of what you signed up for. The instructors don't shake hands. They point to a line on the floor. You stand on it. That is your first lesson. Precision is not a preference here. It is the minimum standard for staying alive. The attrition numbers are posted on a whiteboard near the entrance, like a scoreboard nobody wants to be on. Roughly half of every class fails to complete the pipeline. They say it like they are reading a weather report, 50%. Half of you gone before summer. The first weeks are not about bombs, they are about your body, and whether your body will cooperate when your mind is screaming to quit. You run in boots on sand that shifts under every step. You tread water in full gear until your arms stop feeling like arms. You are cold more than you are comfortable. You are exhausted more than you are rested. The instructors are not cruel, they are just indifferent to your suffering, and that indifference communicates something important. Suffering is not a reason to stop. Suffering is the environment. You work inside it, like you work inside weather. The psychology evaluation comes early. It catches people off guard. It is not a written test. It is a conversation with a man who says almost nothing and watches everything. He is watching for the ones who perform toughness rather than possess it. The performed version cracks under pressure. The real version simply continues. He takes notes you cannot see and makes recommendations that will follow your file for years. You fail your first practical dive exercise. The regulator malfunctions 40 feet down. Instead of following procedure, you panic. For approximately 3 seconds. 3 seconds is enough. You surface. You get your breathing back. You tell your instructor exactly what happened. He nods. Failing is not the problem. Lying about failing is the problem. You go back down the same afternoon. The bomb work starts slowly. This surprises everyone who came here imagining drama. You learn components before you learn devices, wires before circuits, circuits before systems, systems before procedures. The instructors dismantle the romance of the job in the first month, because romance gets people killed. There is no intuition in this work. There is only knowledge and process, and the discipline to apply both when every instinct is telling you to run. Your first render-safe procedure on a training device takes 47 minutes. The benchmark is 12. The instructor watches you from across the room, without expression. He does not tell you that you are slow. He tells you what you did wrong on step 9, and what that error would have meant in a real scenario. Then he resets the device, and tells you to go again. You go again, and again, and again, until the procedure is not something you think through, but something your hands do while your brain stays free. Free to process everything happening around you. That is the goal. Automate the known, so you have capacity for the unknown. You graduate with a designation you do not fully understand yet. The ceremony is quiet, no fanfare, no speeches worth remembering. Your class has shrunk to a number that fits in a single row. You look at the people still standing beside you, and feel something that is not quite pride, but is not quite anything else either. Survival maybe, mutual recognition of something you all went through that the rest of the world did not. Level 2, the Junior Tech. Your unit is in Virginia. It has been operational long enough that everything has a system, and the system has a history you are expected to learn immediately. Your team leader is a chief petty officer named Callahan. He runs 4 miles every morning before anyone else is awake. He does not explain why. You learn quickly that he does not explain most things. He demonstrates. You watch and replicate, or you ask once and then replicate. Questions are fine. The same question twice is not fine. Your first real call comes 6 weeks in. An improvised device discovered under a vehicle, in a parking structure. In a city you will never name publicly, the information is partial, as it almost always is, device type unknown, placement unclear. A crowd held 100 meters away, asking questions nobody can answer yet. You suit up. The bomb suit weighs roughly 80 pounds. It reduces your field of vision and your mobility. In ways that training only partially prepares you for, you walk toward the vehicle, with the specific kind of slowness that looks calm, and is not. Your heart rate is somewhere above what is comfortable. Your breathing is not the measured rhythm from training. You correct it consciously, in through the nose, out slowly. Heart rate drops 9 beats per minute, not enough. You correct again. The device is real, not a drill, not a training scenario. Real wire, real components, real possibility, arranged in a configuration you have to read correctly. On the first attempt, you radio your team lead. You describe what you see with specific vocabulary, vocabulary that transforms chaos into data. Callahan's voice comes back even, neither urgent nor relaxed. He asks 3 questions. You answer 3 questions. He tells you what he thinks. You agree. You begin. The procedure takes 23 minutes. You make no errors. The device is rendered safe. You return to the perimeter. A man in a suit shakes your hand with genuine feeling. You accept the handshake without much expression because the adrenaline is still metabolizing, and what you actually want is water and somewhere to sit down. Callahan says 2 words to you afterward. Good call. That is it. From Callahan, that is a speech. Over the following year, you work calls that range from clear hoaxes to sophisticated devices that require everything you know, and then slightly more than everything you know. You learn that no 2 devices are the same, and that assuming they might be is one of the more reliable ways to get killed. You learn to read scenes before you approach them. The placement of the device, the sightlines, the secondary device possibility, the one that turns rescuers into additional casualties. You learn that the first device is sometimes not the device that matters. You learn the weight of responsibility. That comes from being the person who walks toward the thing everyone else is running from. It is not bravery in the way movies mean it. It is a transaction. You have skills that offset the risk enough to make the math reasonable. Someone has to do this. You are the someone with the training. You walk toward the thing. That is the whole equation. Level 3, the team lead. Callahan moves to an instructor position at Eglin. He recommends you for his slot 3 months before you feel ready. That is standard. Nobody feels ready. Feeling ready is a signal that you have underestimated the job. You inherit a team of 4, with wildly different experience levels, and a junior tech named Okafor, who is technically gifted in ways you are not at that stage, and emotionally underdeveloped in ways that will get him killed, if you do not fix it. He approaches devices with a confidence that has not been earned yet. Confidence built on competence is a resource. Confidence built on inexperience is a liability. Wearing the same face. You work on Okafor carefully, not by telling him he is wrong, by giving him scenarios that reveal the gaps in his understanding. Through direct experience rather than lecture, the day he radios you from a scene with genuine uncertainty in his voice, for the first time, something in you relaxes. He found the edge of what he knows. Now you can build from there. Your call volume increases. Leadership brings harder problems and harder decisions, including the ones where the right answer is no. The right answer is no more often than people expect. Device present, conditions wrong, risk calculation unacceptable, mission adjusted. The pressure to say yes anyway is real. It comes from people with authority above yours, who are looking at maps, not devices. You learn to hold the line, without making enemies you cannot afford. The international deployment changes you, in ways you do not fully understand until you are home. Standing in your kitchen at 2 a.m, unable to explain to your spouse what you are listening for. The devices overseas are different, not more sophisticated necessarily, just designed by people who have spent decades studying the response procedures of the people trying to defeat their work. It is an evolution, like every arms race. Each adaptation produces a counter-adaptation. You are one half of a conversation conducted in explosives and procedure. You lose a colleague on that deployment, not on your team, but close enough that you know his name, and his habits, and the way he laughed at things that were not quite funny. The investigation afterward is thorough. It produces conclusions. The conclusions are filed. The conclusions change training protocols, and none of that changes what happened. You learn that grief in this profession has a shape that does not fit the standard containers. You hold the service, and then you suit up for the next call, because there is always a next call. Level 4, the senior technician. The calls get stranger. You are contacted now for scenarios that fall outside standard categories, devices that represent new thinking, configurations the manual does not cover. Because the manual was written before this existed, you are expected to improvise inside a discipline built to eliminate improvisation. That tension is the whole job at this level. You consult on design, not your devices, the tools your people use, the robots that extend human reach into blast radius, the cameras that see into spaces a body cannot enter. You sit in rooms with engineers who are brilliant with materials and physics, and occasionally need someone to remind them that the person using the equipment will be doing it while terrified, while exhausted, while receiving incomplete information, while something somewhere is ticking. The best equipment accounts for the human inside it. You make a discovery about yourself at this stage, an uncomfortable one. You have become very good at processing information and occasionally less good at listening. A junior tech says something in a debrief that you dismiss too quickly. Later you replay the moment. You realize she was right and you were wrong, and you had stopped listening before she finished speaking. That is a different kind of failure. Harder to see, harder to correct, because it requires looking at something unflattering about who you have become and deciding to change it. You change it slowly, imperfectly. You make the effort anyway. Level 5, the Master Tech. The designation is earned after 20 years, and a review process that takes longer than it should. Master. Not master of everything. Master of the specific intersection of knowledge and judgment and composure that this work requires, and that only time and repetition and survival can produce. You are consulted on cases above the pay grade of people with more rank than you. Rank and experience diverge in this profession. The person with the most authority has not necessarily stood over the most devices. You carry information in your body that cannot be conveyed in a briefing. The slight vibration in your assessment of a scene, the small wrong detail, that nothing in the manual tells you to notice. You notice it anyway. That noticing has saved lives. You cannot explain exactly how. You train now as much as you operate. The passing of knowledge feels increasingly urgent, because you have started to understand how much of what you know exists only inside the people who learned it by doing it. The procedure is documented, the judgment that tells you when to trust the procedure, and when the situation has exceeded the procedure. That lives in people, not manuals. When the people retire, it goes with them, unless they have been deliberate about transmission. You build a mentorship structure that makes you uncomfortable with its formality, but it works, because the formality forces conversations that would otherwise get skipped. You sit with junior techs after difficult calls, and ask the questions that get underneath the debrief. Not what happened. What did you feel when you saw the configuration? And what did that feeling tell you to do before your training overrode it? The gap between instinct and training is where mistakes live. Understanding your own instincts is how you close the gap. You take a call in your 19th year that stays with you. A school device discovered in a mechanical room, 2 hours before students are scheduled to arrive. The configuration is unusual, not in a way the textbook addresses, in a way that tells you someone with real knowledge built this. Built it specifically to defeat the standard response. You take 41 minutes, you make 3 decisions that are not in any procedure document. All 3 are right. The device is rendered safe. The students arrive 2 hours late. They are told there was a gas concern. They have no idea. The city largely has no idea. That invisibility is something you have made peace with, but it took a long time to make that peace. The work that matters most is often the work that cannot be discussed. The outcomes that justify decades of sacrifice are classified or redacted or simply never reported, because the absence of a disaster does not make news. The way disasters do, you saved something that never knew it needed saving. That is the whole career, condensed. Level 6, the end. Your last official call comes on a Tuesday in October, which feels like the wrong day for endings. Nothing significant happens on Tuesdays in October in the stories people tell, but your career does not consult the stories people tell. The device is straightforward, medium complexity. You have rendered safe things 30 times harder, in conditions 30 times worse. Your hands do what they have done more times than you can count. The procedure completes. The scene is cleared. Someone says, "Good job." You say thank you. You do not know until you are in the vehicle driving back that was the last one. The sense arrives slowly, not as revelation, but as weightlifting. The specific weight you have been carrying for 22 years, that you had stopped noticing, because it had become load-bearing, part of the structure of who you are. Without it, the architecture shifts. You are not sure yet what it settles into. The retirement ceremony is modest. The people who matter are there. Callahan, who is older now and walks with a slight lean, but still runs before sunrise. Okafor, who leads a team now, in a city that does not officially have the kinds of problems that require his skills. Rodriguez, the junior tech who was right in that debrief, the one you dismissed too quickly, the one you went back to 3 years later and told. She absorbed the acknowledgement quietly, like someone who had known all along. What you take home, you cannot leave at the ceremony, the hypervigilance that makes parking lots feel like threat assessments. The way a certain kind of tension in the air still registers in your body, before your brain has processed why. The sleep that is functional, but shallow, the anniversary of the colleague you lost, that arrives every year, with the same weight it had the first year. But also this, the calls that were resolved cleanly, the scenarios that were worse in the planning than in the outcome, the junior techs who went on to make decisions that saved people who are alive, and do not know why they are alive. The compounding effect of 22 years of correct decisions, imperfect, but mostly right, when right mattered. It does not balance exactly, it never balances exactly. You did what your country asked, you did it with care and precision, and the slow accumulation of judgment that only comes from doing something hard for a very long time. The gear goes into storage, the knowledge stays, because knowledge does not have a checkout process. You know things about the physics of destruction and the fragility of ordinary life that most people spend their entire lives not knowing and are better off for it. Some nights you dream about wires, not the nightmares you might expect, just wires, the tactile memory of components between your fingers, the decision point where the work pauses, and everything in you quiets down to a single question. What does this tell you? What does this require? And then the answer, and then the next step, one breath at a time until the job is done.